Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Alan Pym. I'm with APOS Systems and pleased to have you with us here for today's webinar. Today we'll be looking at hybrid BI bursting and distribution. And this actually comes along and fits in well with some of the previous sessions that we've had recently around bursting and distribution. So we look forward to talking further with you about this today. So there'll be myself, Fred Walther, and Alan Golding, all of us from APOS that will be presenting material today. And so we're pleased to have you taking the time to be with us here today. And we'll get into our agenda here shortly. Certainly wishing all of you well here during these very strange and odd pandemic times. But again, we wish you all the best there. And again, glad to have you with us today. We will be covering off our agenda here today with some introduction time. Then we'll get looking into defining core needs around BI publishing. We'll be looking specifically at publishing for business objects content, publishing for analytics cloud content, and then bringing that together into hybrid publishing. And we will have some Q&A time at the end of the session, but certainly want you to be able to get your questions into the input panel or the question panel in the webinar console as they come to mind for you. But we will endeavor to get those answered for you during today's session and at the end during the Q&A. All right, let's take care of some quick introductions. So first of all, about ourselves, we are a longtime SAP partner. We are focused very much so on SAP BI solutions. And we have a suite of enhancement solutions for both the Business Objects platform and the Analytics Cloud platform. So our work specifically in Business Objects and predecessor technologies goes back over 20 years now. And more recently, that work has extended into the Analytics Cloud environment. So we're pleased to be involved in both of those platforms because there's a lot of organizations who are also involved in both platforms and running both systems simultaneously. Very good, strong customer base globally that's using our solutions. Here, the solutions that we've listed around our business objects capabilities, and you'll see this ranges from an enhanced auditing and monitoring, archiving and backup of business objects content, publishing, which we'll be looking at today, migration of web intelligence reports, automated administration, query governance, automated testing, and also into topic of data connection. Into our Analytics Cloud solutions, data connection is also into the Analytics Cloud area. In fact, lots going on in that realm. Translation of business objects modeling and publishing, which again we'll be talking about today, and also into monitoring and auditing in the Analytics Cloud environment. So that's just a quick glimpse into the solutions that we have for these platforms. All right, let's take a few minutes and just consider this topic of hybrid BI and essentially what that means. I don't know that there's any one single definition that fits for all. So this definition of hybrid BI will probably be different within each organization, but we're going to try and put some simple parameters to this and what we believe this means. So we're going to consider just on-premise deployments of BI, cloud deployments of BI, and hybrid. But there's more than just one facet to this. We will try and keep it simple though, and just identify the two key aspects of where the BI platform is and where the data is that's being reported from. So we'll make the firewall the separation between an on-prem and a cloud solution. Probably for many of you, you are either in this situation or it's in your fairly recent past that this is your situation where you have an on-premise deployment going against on-premise data and no cloud deployment. Now, if you're attending today's session, you're either working some in cloud and or you're near term thinking about moving to the cloud. And So that starts to get into this mixture where some of your data may be in the cloud, but your BI platform is still on-premise. Or it might be a combination of on-premise and cloud data, but an on-premise deployment of BI. Or it might be a cloud deployment of your BI and analytics platform going against on-premise data. These are all scenarios that we're seeing, and again, more combinations of where the data resides. For a lot of you, though, this is more the scenario that you'll probably be getting into here very soon if you're not there already, where you have both on-premise deployment of your BI platform as well as cloud deployment, and a mixture of cloud and on-premise data. So wherever you fit in that, this is where we would consider hybrid BI, where it's a combination of either the platform or the location of the data. For today's discussion, though, we're going to focus in on more on the fact that there are two platforms for the BI and analytics. So specifically, we'll be considering the fact that you're probably in a scenario where there is both BusinessObjects and Analytics Cloud. And as a result, you've got needs around utilizing content from both of these systems. So that's really where we're going to focus today, and we're going to focus on the topic of publishing. So as part of that, I think we want to make a clear distinction between pull and push. And with that, let's put some definition to that, or some description to that. Commonly with BI systems, it's a pull scenario where we have users from various parts of the organization who are logging into the BI system, and they are making requests within that system, and content is being made available to them. So they're going into the system and pulling that content for themselves. Now that usually means logging into the system, navigating through folder structures, getting to the report that's desired, and then running that report. Typical workflow. But for lots of users, that there are certain needs, certain user bases, certain categories of users that requires content to be pushed to them. So there needs to be a schedule created within the BI system so that content is automatically pushed out to them. Might be in PDF form, might be in some other format, but again, it's not requiring a user to prompt that action. Something like a schedule is creating that push of content out to the end user. Now, this is a pretty central theme to what we want to talk about today. And this is a situation where there is a range of users who all have very similar questions. In fact, they have the same business questions, but they're representing a different area or a different region or a different facet of the business. So they're very similar in their needs, they're similar in their roles, but they have a different region of responsibility. And so as a result, even though they have the same questions, they need different answers for territory A versus territory B versus territory C. So it needs to be the same content, but how do we effectively get this content out to them to address these different answers that are needed? And so it's very common that within the BI system, there will either be a publishing module or an accompanying publishing module that will take care of these kinds of requirements. So that publishing module has a very structured approach that gets content or communication out to the end user, and it's generating very tailored content for them, and it's overseeing the distribution of that content out to those end users so that they're getting the specific content that they need. Again, same questions, but different answers. So when user 2 receives the content, they're seeing this story, this report, and it looks this way for their area of responsibility. But when user 5 receives the content, even though it's the same report, it's showing data only that's specific to them. So this is a very common requirement and a common theme. And really what we're tackling today is how we address this across platforms. So these kinds of requirements might be for salespeople. That's a very common use case scenario. It might be for store locations where each store needs to get individualized content. It might be something where it's a production facility. There's countless kinds of requirements where individualized content needs to be distributed out to end users. So for our conversation today, really what we'll be focusing on is how APOS Publisher, as the publishing module, functions with business objects to accomplish these kinds of needs and additional needs, which we'll be defining here in just a moment. And similarly, the APOS Publisher for Cloud, how it functions with Analytics Cloud and its content and getting that distributed out. And of course, we'll then be talking about how to bring that together and unify that content. So as previously looked at, the APOS Publisher solution and where it sat on the list of the APOS solutions for business objects, as well as the Publisher for Cloud solution. So that's really where we're going to zero in today and spend the time looking at this. All right, we wanted to find some very core needs that we've learned about and worked with customers about over the last 15, 16 years on these kinds of topics. So the first, and directly in line with what we've already talked about, having individualized report content and having the appropriate filters in place so that the right content gets to the right user. Now, as part of this, there are format considerations. What is the right content format? Is it PDF? Is it Excel? Is it something else? Those are important topics. Merged report content. This is where we take content from more than just one report, but bringing it together into one individualized document. So it's a consolidation process that, that brings that content merged together. Targeted delivery. We represented here before what you probably saw as email, getting content pushed out by email. But there are other ways of getting content distributed. And for certain needs, there may be other strategic distributions. But basically, we need to get content to the position, to the location where users are going to be able to make use of that. Security is often a very big topic in this, so we need to have the content secured. And we want all of this to be happening within a very much a data-driven process so that it's automated and is fluid when data updates happen around areas of responsibilities and users, that this just automatically becomes part of the process. Within that, though, is this last point of conditional bursting, so that bursting only happens when certain data conditions exist. And so then we have a lot of business rules and logic that happens behind the scenes so that content's only pushed out when it needs to be pushed out. So this is an important set of core needs that we're going to be considering as we go through the various aspects today of APOS Publisher, APOS Publisher for Cloud. So we want you to be thinking about these as we do move through this. So let's have Fred Walther join us here now, and Fred's going to walk us through the APOS Publisher solution. Fred, I'm just going to get controls over to you. And as Fred's going through here, of course, the outcome of publishing is a document that's very consumable by the end user. So part of what we'll be looking at today is what the end user experiences, but even more so, what are the requirements, what are the interfaces that someone who creates the processes, what would they go through, and what sort of flexibility do they have? So with all of that said, Fred, we'll pass things over to you.
Great, thanks, Alan. Yep, there we go. So we want to take a look at Publisher for Business Objects. So this is, as Alan has mentioned, the on-premise bursting or publication, distribution of the content, getting it out to those required users. And I think Alan was very clear when he said you want the right data and to the right person at the right time in the right format. So this is what this is really all about. And here, just this screenshot simply shows, you know, on the left, the stack for SAP. In the center, APOS Publisher. and the different capabilities that it brings: advanced bursting, report consolidation, or workflow control, monitoring, alerting, auditing. And then on the right-hand side, the different formats, whether it be email or any flavor of FTP or print, bursting to a folder, back to business objects, all the different mechanisms there that are available. So the first thing we want to look at is sort of high-level description of bursting. Bursting consists of either multi-pass or single-pass bursting. There are benefits to both methodologies. Multi-pass, we create one single instance for every recipient that's going to be receiving it. Single pass, we create one large instance, and then we slice up that instance. So there are benefits to both, and some reports will benefit by one method over the other. Multi-format bursting, some people require a document in PDF and Excel, but only with one schedule, one burst. So we can do that. Consolidation is something Alan mentioned, where we bring the content of multiple reports together in one document. And dynamic data-driven bursting. So we've got an SQL statement that queries a data source of some kind that has a list of the recipients, that has what their slice of data represents, what their needs are, what their format need is, what their destination need is, and we'll read that. Every time we execute the burst, we'll read that. So if anything has changed, it's automatically going to be included in that bursting definition. And then, of course, conditional bursting. I would like to burst my reports, but only if a certain condition is met. If report X is finished, if table XYZ has more than 300 rows in it, whatever the condition might be, we want to be able to respond to that. Now we talk about individualizing report content. So here, for example, we see a sales report, and this slice of data is for the person. They're getting just the data for England. So each recipient, we want them to get just their slice of data. And we might have multiple recipients. So one person gets England, another person gets the data for Canada, another person gets the data for France. A fourth individual might get all of them, the countries together. And so it doesn't have to be just one slice. It could be multiple slices for each recipient, for any recipient. Now, to make this happen, we've got a UI that's part of our bursting solution that allows you to customize just about every aspect of the burst. So you can see there are a lot of input boxes here that have data coming from our data source. Anything with the two slashes on it is reading dynamically from our data source, which again is an SQL statement that's very flexible and fluid. It's going to be responding to whatever the data is that at that point in time. And you can see here, I'm customizing the message, sending this one by email, and just creating a message that's customized for each recipient. So that's one of the keys, is it's unique for each recipient. Every recipient gets exactly what they need in the format that they need, and just about every aspect of the burst can be customized. I want to look at consolidation now. So bringing content together. So I might have a sales report, and then I've got a salesperson salaries, and the commission. I'd like to combine those together into one document. And so we can do that very easily with a mechanism that's part of our publisher solution that will create an output that will contain the information for 1, 2, 3, 100 different reports, and create a table of contents and the navigation bookmarks on the left-hand side that lets us navigate the package very quickly. So being able to consolidate these two reports together, you can see it's difficult to show consolidation, but on the upper left-hand, we see the PDF file with the sales report highlighted in the bottom right, with the salaries and commission report highlighted, but they're all part of the same PDF file. As well as PDF, we may want to have our output in Excel. So being able to consolidate to a single Excel file and have one tab for each report that's part of the package, so that we get the data in the format that's right for that person. Now, we want to talk a little bit about targeted delivery, delivering in specific formats, and we'll also talk about destinations. So looking at formats first, we want to be able to convert the report type we're working with, Crystal, Webby, Analysis Office, to specific formats, PDF, Excel, text, etc. So some formats may not be native to the original document. For example, Analysis Office, its native format is Excel, but we might have users that require it in PDF. Not a problem, we can handle that. That's part of our bursting solution. Again, whatever formats are right for the person. So one person's getting it in PDF, another person's getting it in Excel. The different destinations that we support, different flavors of email. So we see here email with an attachment at the top on the right-hand side. Also at the bottom, email as content. So the body of the email contains the data for the report. Also the different flavors of FTP, SFTP, FTPS, network file location. That includes not only your network, but also folders inside of Business Objects. So I can burst to a Business Objects folder, any folder in the BI system. Sending to printer can be done for any content type. So you may say, well, Webbies don't go directly to printer, but we can handle that. We can, after the report is finished, we process the end result, and we can send it directly to a printer if that's required. Content management systems such as SharePoint, OpenText, whatever content management system you may have, we can plug into it and distribute the reports directly to there if that's a requirement. Now we want to talk about security, making sure that the data we're sending out is secure. So there's a number of ways we can help with securing the data, and one might be simply password protecting, either a PDF file as we see in this screenshot or an Excel file. We may get a little bit more detailed and have a unique password for each recipient. So we can read the password from our data source, and so every person will have their own password. The third area in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see being able to encrypt. So we can let you plug in an encryption DLL and encrypt all aspects of the distribution. And of course, then there's a secure email plugin as well that will really help with ensuring that the data we're sending via email is 100% secure. Distributing the end results, we've got want to make sure this is automated and data driven. I've mentioned this a few times, but you can see that the data source for the burst is basically an SQL statement. You can see select star from, in my case, I've got one simple table, but it could be a very complex SQL statement drawing data from multiple tables. It could be a view that you've already created. The point is it's dynamic. We're going to read that SQL statement every time the burst gets run. And so if data has changed in the back end, we're going to handle that for you. This is just a screenshot of what the result set might be. So if I'm sending out a burst to, here I've got about 20 or so recipients that I'm sending to. It could be, 1,000 recipients. There's really no limit as to how many we can burst to. It's just a matter of time. And everybody's slice might be different. Everybody's format might be different. We can handle all the different combinations and permutations of formats and destinations. And as I mentioned before, one person might get multiple formats and multiple destinations, and that's okay. We can handle that as well. And we come finally to the area of conditional bursting. Well, how can we set up conditions upon, when the burst should occur, and might be time-based. So we might be saying execute this every day at 10 o'clock. And we can handle that through Business Objects. We can handle that through Windows Task Scheduler if that's a need. But we can also handle it through database monitoring. So we want to monitor a particular database table or field for a very specific event to occur. And if that event occurs in that data source, Okay, kick off the burst. And email bursting. So if a particular email has been delivered to a particular email inbox, we can monitor that inbox, and when that email is received, then we can trigger the action of bursting. So there are a number of ways that we can handle the different conditions to control the flow of bursting. One area I want to just take a quick look at, we've been talking about bursting, and bursting is typically a sort of a wide scope. We have multiple recipients likely involved in this. It's typically set up by an administrative type user, but we can also use the integration directly in BI Launchpad. So the code is in BI 42 SP6 and above, I believe, and you can leverage the capabilities of our distribution directly in BI Launchpad, or even in the Central Management Console schedule pages. So the APOS, the special APOS destinations and formats are made available to an individual scheduler. So it doesn't have to be a burst per se. It can be an individual user who wants to leverage these extra capabilities, so the different FTP formats, for example, or sending it to SharePoint or OpenText directly from the Business Objects platform. So Alan, I think I'll turn things back over to you at this point.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Fred. And that's good coverage on that. I wanted to highlight a scenario where one of our customers, the Salling Group, has been very active with the Publisher solution. Salling Group is a major retailer in Denmark, and working or operating a high volume of grocery stores, convenience stores, and very high employee count throughout Europe. They're doing some very impressive things where daily reports are being sent out to store locations, and this is being very helpful for them to get store level information out to their user base, which is really helping them with monitoring and tracking their objectives and results from the day previous, and helping them with their ongoing usage and accountability, really within their teams in the locations. And so this is really proving very effective for them. What was almost an untenable process previously is being managed very effectively with the APOS Publisher solution. So the volume that they're sending out is really a major factor in why previous approaches were very difficult to work with. So APOS Publisher's handling that quite well. It's been a great customer to work with, Salling Group, and we do have a customer success story that gives more detail on that if you'd like to see that. Okay. We want to continue on now, and we'll invite Alan Golding into the discussion. And Alan, I'm just going to get controls passed over to you. Are you there?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Alan. I'm here. Okay, so before we make any further steps, I just kind of want to remind everyone to input your questions in the question box, and we'll get to those at the end. We see some questions coming on already, which is great to see. So I want to again bring up this slide that was shown earlier on, showing the list of core needs. The reason I want to bring this up because it's important to note that in the concept of hybrid BI, when it comes to publishing, you want to have a lot of similarities between the features and the requirements that you have between your publishing for Business Objects and your publishing for Analytics Cloud. You don't want a great disparity between what you can accomplish with publishing for both Business Objects on-premise and Analytics Cloud. So we're going to stick with that same core needs list here, but in relation to Analytics Cloud. So just to talk about the architecture of Publisher for Cloud, it's a solution that gets installed on-premise. We have a number of key processes there that allow us to communicate to Analytics Cloud platform, take those SSE stories and burst them out to the destinations, the formats, and the recipients that you're looking for. Just to the left here, I want to point out the bursting recipient data. We'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but essentially here we're able to connect to a data source and dynamically drive the properties of these bursting definitions. All right, so the first section here, filtered individualized report. What we want to discuss here is something that Fred talked about with business objects, but for SAC, we want the same functionality as well. We want to be able to target and individualize the report content from the Analytics Cloud platform tailored to the recipient. So what we're looking for here is a particular SAP Analytics Cloud story showing one set of data in a PDF format that one user received. So if you just note the bar charts and some of the key metrics there that are showing up on this slide, we're going to show then another recipient that gets the same story in the same format, but it's tailored. It's filtered differently for that user, so they're getting a different set of data. Now, how we accomplish that is the first screenshot at the top there just shows us within our interface how we can set filters for stories, whether they are page level stories or story level filters. We can set those. If you have variables on your SAC models, we can apply values there. And then we can dynamically drive those values and tailor those filter values specifically to the recipients. Okay, when it comes to merged content report, so here we're talking about the ability to be able to take different sets of pages from an SAC story or stories and be able to consolidate them into a single document. So what we can do is we have full control over what pages from what stories get burst out and what recipient receives it. So what we're showing here on the left-hand side is a screenshot of a geomap with some bar charts of one particular story and a page therein. And on the right-hand side, then we're looking at a weekly sales account stats story, which is completely separate to the one to the left. But on the very far left, you'll see that this is a PDF document. You'll see the thumbnails showing each page of that document, so we can consolidate and merge that content. And again, just a screenshot of the interface as to how we accomplish that. So when we build a bursting definition, you define what story you want to burst. And the very first number highlighted there in yellow, number 2, that indicates that we're bursting page number 2 from that story. Now the second line, we're saying we're bursting page number 1, but to the immediate right of that, we can see we're overriding the story ID and we're calling upon a separate story altogether. So that's how we're able to accomplish that and consolidate those pages from different SAC stories into a single document. Okay, so targeted delivery content. So Fred did a good job showing us what we can do there with Publisher for business objects, but we can accomplish the same targeted delivery of content for SAP Analytics Cloud. So in this screenshot here, we're looking at a distribution from SAC to email. And that same geomap you're looking at here is actually in the body of the email with some nicely formatted HTML. We've also inputted attachments on that email in multiple formats, in Excel, PDF, and PowerPoint. So whether you want to burst out a single story, but to multiple recipients and target the delivery to specific formats, whether it's a user on the road, they're a mobile user, they want to quickly open up their email, look at the PDF file, or if it's a user in a boardroom and they want to put up a PowerPoint presentation based off of the latest data, we can really target the delivery of that content. And here we're just looking at, on the left-hand side, how we can drop and push that content to a network file share location, whether it's an on-premise server or some local file shares as well. We can place those in those network file share locations. And then just on the right-hand side, a screenshot of what that story looks like in that PDF file. This is how we accomplish that. So again, just a screenshot of the interface. On the left-hand side, we can output to email, FTP, network path, and then the bottom right, for each option, there's additional selections you can make there. So for example, we select email. Well, now we have a sub-option. Do you want to send as an attachment or body of the email or both? And we can then set up the recipients, the CCC, the BCC, and from addresses from there. Secure delivery of content, always a very important concept, especially if you have stories or business objects reports that are getting sent to external users, and those reports or stories contain sensitive data. So with relation to SAP Analytics Cloud, we can password protect those bursting attachments. So whether it's email or FTP or network file share location, we can protect those story reports so that users have to input a password to gain access to the data. So you can see here, it's just a user entering the password to be able to access that story report. Once the password is entered, then you gain access to the story and you can see the content in PDF format. And again, this is just a screenshot of how we do that. Now, there's also additional options here. We can also zip file the attachments up. So we can place the PDF file in a zip file. We can password protect the zip file, and then we can have a second password on the PDF itself. So it's kind of two-factor password protection there. Additionally, there's some options for PDF specifically. We can control whether users have the ability to be able to print the PDF, edit, copy, make notes on those PDF files as well. Okay, so automated data-driven processes. So how can we automate these processes, and what options are there when we want to drive the properties of the definition using data? So from an automated perspective, we can schedule these bursting definitions from Analytics Cloud using Windows Task Scheduler. We can set them up on a recurring basis, whether weekly or monthly and so on. So that allows you to automate the delivery of those bursting definitions that are burst from SAC. As mentioned, we can also drive the properties dynamically, so that gives us more scalability with our bursting settings. So we could take a single bursting definition, we can drive multiple sets of stories with multiple pages to multiple formats, multiple destinations and recipients, different sets of filters tailored for each recipient. And all that can be dynamically driven from the data source. So this screenshot just shows you how we can set up a connection to a data source, basically anything with ODBC. We have a number of options there for connecting to a data source. We can connect to an Excel file with what you can see here. So this is just a basic Excel spreadsheet with some data-driven properties that I want to assign to the bursting definition. So I can see from left to right, I have email lists, I have file names, I have story IDs, I have model names, dimension names, and then the values. Now we can also take these properties from an Access database or a SQL database or an Oracle database. Again, anything that we can connect with ODBC can be used as a data source. Okay, and conditional bursting. So we talked about how we can automate the scheduling of the bursting definition, but how can we conditional burst it, and what are the options there? So let's just take this screenshot here. This is a story in Analytics Cloud. It's a summary page on the story, and I want to focus in on that key KPI called gross margin percent. So it's highlighted in yellow there to the bottom left. Notice that its value is 28.47%. Now this is a key critical indicator. We want to be able to monitor this because it fluctuates on a daily basis, and once it goes over a certain threshold, we want to immediately burst out the bursting definitions. So we're pushing content as soon as those values change. So we can have options to do that. So how we do that is, first of all, where is that data coming from? Okay, so it's coming from a data source somewhere, so most likely a database. So what we can do then is we can connect to that reporting database. We can monitor values in that database based off of a SQL statement, for example. So here in the SQL statement highlighted in yellow, I've set up a query to say, monitor that field called gross margin percent and tell me if it's ever greater or equal to 30. So right now it's at 28.47, but as soon as it hits 30%, I want to automate or take an action. I want to trigger something to happen. And the options there are, first of all, we can send at the very top there, we can send an event to the Windows event log. We can send and integrate with a third-party SNMP system. We can send out alerts alone just to email, so we can just send an email alert notification. But at the very bottom, highlighted in yellow, we can execute a script, and the script can trigger the bursting definition. So now we have a process where we're monitoring the key metrics that are inside of the stories in Analytics Cloud. As soon as those thresholds are met based off of those metrics, we can conditionally burst those stories out to the consumers that need them.
Great, thanks, Alan. Good coverage there on what's possible with bursting analytics cloud content. Similar to how we referred to a case study for the Publisher solution, our Publisher for Cloud solution worked very closely with an organization called Precision Drilling, who is an international drilling contractor. And they had very specific needs around getting cost management, cost control information out to their leaders on specific rig locations, drilling rig locations. And so they're using Publisher for Cloud to be able to get that analytics cloud content pushed out to them on a very structured approach, very managed approach. And this is getting timely content pushed out to those managers who otherwise would have difficulty getting access to this content. So connectivity really is the challenge there, but getting tailored content out to them is really quite key. So this has been a good win for them to be able to have this specified and individualized content out to each of those users on the right approach. And they've really emphasized the ease of deployment as a key win in doing this as well. Okay, let's shift again now back to Fred. And Fred, if you can walk us through this topic of how do we bring these two approaches together. So if I'm an organization that has both business objects and analytics cloud, I have meaningful content in both systems. How do I bring this together? Because we're going to see more and more organizations, and we are seeing more and more organizations asking this question. How do we simplify the process and get this content pulled together? So if you can walk us through that.
Sure, Alan, thanks. Yeah, hybrid bursting is a question that, as you mentioned, a lot of organizations are grappling with. We have bursting needs. We need to, bring the two areas together. So on the left in this particular screenshot, we're looking at a report that's generated in our BI system, the one that we saw earlier on in my examples, and on the right, a screenshot from the SAC environment. And that's great. I can get my data from both places and I can put it in emails and so forth, but how can I combine that together? And that's what we're going to attempt to look at here. So by using the consolidation capabilities that are inherent in the APOS publisher, we're able to specify that either PDF or Excel documents should be added to a consolidated report package, either at the beginning of the package or at the end of the package. So you can see here we're looking at a load of different parameters that are available to us for tables of contents and numbering, et cetera, et cetera. But what we're focusing in on is what's highlighted on this screen, and that is I'm creating a preceding document list. So I'm going to look for the output that was created to a network file location from the SAC environment, and I'm going to combine that with my BI data. So here I'm looking at now a PDF file that has a table of contents, and it's got the test report, which is coming from my SAC environment, and I'm going to combine that with the pending orders, sales by country, and sales and salaries commission reports that are part. So here we're looking, again, I want to emphasize we're looking at the exact same PDF document, but all of the different components, all of the different reports are combined in that. So the ones from BI and the ones from SAC. So PDF is probably the most common output that people deal with, but Excel is certainly a close second. And being able to combine that data from SAC and from BI, put it into one Excel workbook, and then have that Excel workbook available with a tab for each of the reports. So we can see the test report there on tab 1. Over on the right-hand side, highlighted in yellow, are the tabs that came from the BI environment. So all together in one consolidated Excel document. Yeah, and that's really just a quick demo of how we can consolidate data from both environments. Alan, we'll turn it back to you.
Great, thanks, Fred. So just to reemphasize on that point, where we're using the publisher capabilities to bring together the content from both Publisher and Analytics Cloud. So on the line, if you're listening in and you are currently a Publisher user, then that will be very clear to you on how that can progress. That would mean the addition of Publisher for Cloud, and then we'd be able to utilize that. If you're a Publisher for Cloud user and you don't have Publisher, or you're not currently using either technologies, then just want to make you aware that there is viable approaches for commercially for bringing these two solutions together. So we're basically a hybrid offering. So we would want to talk to you about those aspects as well. All right. Just as we get into the last section of our presentation here and get to our Q&A in just a moment, want to highlight an upcoming event. 2 weeks from today, we'll be continuing on our hybrid BI topics, and we'll be looking at the aspects of data connectivity. We talked earlier about how data can be sitting in many different locations, of course, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on premise. This is one of the topic areas that lots of organizations are dealing with in how do I manage the connectivity around all of this? How do I have a mechanism to simplify this whole process? And as mentioned earlier, our Live Data Gateway solution is something that can be extremely helpful in all of this. So we'll be focusing on how to help with that, how all of that can assist with not only simplifying things, but really enabling self-service BI in a very effective way. So we'd invite you to join us for that. If you're not connected to us on LinkedIn or on Twitter, we'd encourage you to do that. We're getting lots of information distributed out through those channels, so please join us there. We're also part of an SAC group on LinkedIn, and we'd invite you to join that LinkedIn group as well. All right, let's get to our questions here. So we'll open things up again to both Fred and Alan. Some of the questions that have come in, if you can give some feedback on that.
Sure, so I see some questions coming in from our panel here. So first one is, does the on-premise bursting solution need to live in its own box, or is it a service installed in the current BobJ installation? So great question. So both Publisher solutions for both SAC and business objects can sit on the one box. However, there are certain services that will need to be installed on the BobJ environment in order to take advantage of the full suite of functionalities there. Another question is, for SAC, is it available for application designer, planning, and story? So another great question there. So absolutely, we support for SAC publishing with the capability to burst not only stories, but applications as well. Another question here, do you support live stories and how do credentials get passed? So yes, we can support stories that are either acquired or live. And for live connectivity-based stories, we have mechanisms on how you can pass the credentials needed at runtime at the execution of the burst to be able to pass those credentials to the back-end data source. I think that's all the questions I have. Fred, do you have any?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Yeah, there's a couple here. One wondering about combining the scheduling. So we've seen combining the data, that's okay, but what about combining the scheduling between BI and SAC? And yes, certainly, because we have that monitoring capability, we can monitor an SQL, we can monitor for a file being created, any number of different ways that would then kick off the bursting either in SAC, and then when that's finished, kick it off in BI, and then combine the two. But yes, certainly we can combine the scheduling in a few different ways. And another person asks about analysis office documents. So I guess most of our focus had been on, for BI, had been on Webby and Crystal, but certainly we can bring analysis office documents into the mix as well, and being able to publish those in whatever sort of format is required. So PDF, Excel, of course, Excel is the native format for AO, but PDF text, whatever we need, and then being able to distribute those along with the other documents that we talked about today. So yeah, we've got it covered, I think, 6 ways from Sunday, they might say.
Okay, very good. So thanks for those questions, and thanks for the feedback, Alan and Fred. Thanks too for your presentation today. We appreciate the content that you covered up, so thank you very much. And I guess just lastly to our audience, thank you for your time today and your interest. We appreciate that you've joined us, and hopefully this has been helpful information, and we certainly look forward to working with you on these kinds of topics. As you log out today, you will be prompted for a survey. It's a very quick survey, so if you wouldn't mind taking just a moment to give us some quick feedback there, we'd appreciate it regarding today's session and future topics as well. So with that, let's draw things to a close, and have a great day, everyone. Stay safe. Bye now.